I personally think what's going to happen, and WallStreetBets and these millennials might be the trigger for it. They might not do it all themselves, but they'll wake people up to the fact what's happening on Wall Street. And it could be the beginning of the end of this paper scheme that's lasted like 50 years, since 1971, where Wall Street, the hedge funds, central bankers manipulate the value or the price of everything. And I think that's going to come home to roost. And the rebalancing will be done by real money, gold and silver. Is it going to happen next week or next month? I don't know, but I think we're getting a lot closer to it. Thursday, January 28th, 2021, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So today we're going to look at whether a bunch of millennials on Reddit are going to bring down Wall Street and the system. Some of you have heard of what's going on with GameStop, a stock that's gone from $2.50 last year in April or March to around 400 recently. There's been a massive short squeeze. And I'm going to talk about that and the fact that, yes, Wall Street, the City of London, the central banks, the regulators, yes, they do have a club, and we're not part of it. We've seen articles in the past, about 11 years ago, I think Matt Taibbi wrote on Rolling Stone about the great American bubble machine, about Goldman Sachs, how they've been fleecing the public and rigging markets since the 1920s. They call the Goldman Sachs the great vampire squid. But I'm going to reference as well a piece written by Martin Armstrong while he was still in prison. He was in prison for 11 years, and according to him, he was there without a charge. He was released in 2011, but he started issuing or printing or writing articles on Scribd back in the before 2008, before the crisis, and we used to read all his stuff at work. And I printed out one of the really interesting articles or kind of pamphlet he wrote on Scribd entitled "It's Just Time: The Decline and Fall of the United States? The Global Financial System or Capitalism." So, and he wrote that in 2008. Here it is. He talks on page 60 about the Billionaire Club, and we're going to look into that. But before, let's briefly go over this GameStop saga. I'm going to recommend you watch a very good video explaining what's going on with GameStop and other stocks that have been heavily shorted by the hedge funds. It's on the YouTube channel called The Hill by a guy called Sagar and Jetty. It's entitled "Wall Street Elites Destroyed, Beaten by Redditors at Their Own Rigged Game." I highly recommend you watch that. I think it gives the essence of what's happening. I looked further into this yesterday. One of my viewers contacted me and he explained to me what was going on. And there's even speculation that they might go after the gold and silver shorts, after the bullion banks, because you have to understand, and I worked in this environment in the City of London, which is the equivalent of Wall Street here in the UK, for 20 years. So what are hedge funds? Well, they're mostly bank traders who have done very well at the bank, who have made good money, but they come to a point in their careers where there's a limit to how much they're going to make. So what they do is they leave the bank, they open a hedge fund, and they get financing from usually the banks that they left. And what advantage is it for the banks and for the trader? Well, for the banks, the advantage is that the trader that leaves and starts a hedge fund takes the risk off the bank's balance sheet and puts it onto his hedge fund or her hedge fund. The advantage for the trader, yes, he takes on more risk, but he has a bigger potential to make a lot more money, especially if he has 1 or 2 good years. The structure of hedge funds is that you get a 1 or 2% management fee. So if his old employer puts a few billion with him, and then some investors come in, the Billionaire Club, and puts a few more billions with him, he has a few good years, he's made for life. And if he's clever enough, or she's clever enough, they can keep going and do really well. So that's what hedge funds are. They're just there with the banks. They're part of the whole game. And we've seen the Federal Reserve, Federal Reserve Bank of New York, already come to the rescue of Wall Street several times. It wasn't just in '08. It was in 1998 with LTCM, which was a hedge fund. Even though LTCM collapsed, the Fed had to kind of salvage the rest of Wall Street, the big banks like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, because they fund all these hedge funds. As I said earlier, yes, they get money from rich investors and rich individuals from all over the world. But that's what hedge funds are. They're part of the club. And I think it was Mr. Andretti in his video in The Hill, which I highly recommend you watch, who said that a lot of these millennials, a lot of these people on the subreddit post or group, it's called WallStreetBets or WSB. They were in grade school, or they're really young back in '08, '09, when they saw maybe their parents or even grandparents lose a lot of their savings, lose their homes. But at the same time, they saw that Wall Street has done better than ever since then because they were bailed out. You need to watch The Big Short as well, a great movie that talks about that. And again, after the collapse in March last year, who's benefited again? Well, the billionaires, Wall Street. So is this for real? I don't know. It's difficult to say. A lot of people are talking, oh, is the SEC or is the government gonna, come in and crack their whip on these group of millennials on Reddit? Well, they could. It's going to be hard. I think the group has now got over 3 million followers. I even went and had a look at that group. The guy who told me about it yesterday, he led me to there, and I had a look, and they're even talking about, oh, can we bring silver, the silver shorts and the gold shorts down? There was a post about that. I'm not going to dwell too much into that, but one thing I would say, if they want to do that, it's not by going after mining stocks that are heavily shorted, like First Majestic, but it's going outside the system, actually, which I doubt, or you never know, which I think they should, is to buy physical silver coins, physical gold. That's how they unrig the precious metals market. And precious metals rigging is at the heart of the whole rigging of the financial system, because their money and the bankers, that's why they control the price of gold and silver so much. And I've even made a mug. It's called Only Physical Gold and Silver Will Slay the Bullion Banks. And it's a picture of David and Goliath, as you can see there. The other thing I would say that this millennial group, or WallStreetBets, these Reddit posters are doing, in my opinion, is a bit of revenge. Because you probably heard of Robinhood, the trading platform for millennials, for young people. And I thought it was weird last year when people were talking about that it's a free system, that you can buy and sell stocks and not pay any commission. But then we found out that the people at Robinhood were getting paid millions of dollars by the hedge funds, by Wall Street, so that they could see or front run all the orders of the Millennials on Robinhood. And how do they do that? Well, it's through the high frequency trading systems that hedge funds can afford and we mere mortals can't afford. So they have an advantage of nanoseconds. They will see your orders on Robinhood go in, and they will be able to front run it because their systems are so advanced. And that's all to do with the high frequency trading on these exchanges like NASDAQ, especially. So yeah, they were getting ripped off basically by Robinhood. So what better way than to get back at Wall Street through engineering a short squeeze on the most shorted stocks that usually hedge funds act upon. And I think the biggest hit hedge fund is a hedge fund called Melvin Capital. They've had to ask for like $2.5 billion or more in help from their funders, which are bigger hedge funds. So they're all interconnected. And I'd say the big banks are part of this as well. Keep an eye on the repo market. We could see the repo market start getting in trouble like it did in September 2019, because all these hedge funds, all these banks, all the funding goes through the repo market. The repo market is the pawn broker for all this kind of activity. And yes, you can go look at the subreddit group WSB, Wall Street Bets, and they're talking about a lot of other companies to go after. A lot of other shorts. I think they're going after BlackBerry yesterday. They went after AMC as well, Nokia, all like companies, old economy companies that have been beaten down by Wall Street. They're going after those companies where the short position in relative to the float of shares is high. I think GameStop, it was over 100%, the short position, like 140%. So that in itself should be illegal. The fact that the hedge funds are naked shorting all these stocks. But I wanted to reference It's Just Time. So that's Martin Armstrong's very good piece about the whole system, about cycles that he wrote in prison and published back in 2008, October 2008. My friend and I at work, my colleague, I got him into gold and into looking at everything like the monetary system. We printed it and we had it bound. And yeah, so I still have it like a book. So we go to page 60 where Martin Armstrong talks about the Wall Street, the rigging of Wall Street. And you kind of wonder whether he was sent to jail for 11 years without charge because they're trying to discredit him because he's discredited Wall Street. That's the old strategy of these people. I watched the other day Enemy of the State for the umpteenth time, and they talk about this strategy. You discredit the person that's going to come and expose you before they can expose you, so that they have no credibility. But he talks here on page 60, and I'll go through this. It's called The Manipulation of Markets, the Dirty Little Big Secret. So I won't go through the whole section, but you will get the gist of what's happening or what's happened before. So what about the regulators? Well, a lot of these regulators, they come from Wall Street, from the big banks. I found it funny the other day that because I think there's a guy, he was CFTC head, and he's a former Goldman Sachs guy, and he's going to be the head of the SEC. I think under the Biden administration. Yeah, and his name is Gary Gensler. So people think that he's going to be really tough, Gary Gensler, but he's a former Goldman Sachs guy. And a lot of these regulators are really ex-bankers or ex-Wall Street types. So let's go through Mr. Armstrong's declarations here about the Billionaire Club, he calls it as well. There was a lot of talk about regulating speculation because of oil rising to unprecedented levels. Let us make this very clear. There has been a core group of firms that manipulate markets to obtain that guaranteed trade without risk. It has been limited to the currencies and commodities in general. For these are markets that are regulated by the generally incompetent CFTC. What the lawyers have told me, if you can't get a job at the Justice Department, you can't get a job at the SEC, then what you do is go to the CFTC. It is true, their attorneys are not the sharpest nail in the box, nor are they the brighter bulb in the light shop. Many people knew that I would routinely warn about which market was going to be manipulated next. I had a network of brokers who were not part of the club, who would also help monitor what was going on. I refrained from ever saying who was doing the manipulation. That was not my job the way I saw it, particularly when the Justice Department, CFTC, and CSEC were never interested in prosecuting manipulation cases. Lawyers told me the government attorneys said they were difficult cases to prove. Of course, when the manipulators were the big houses who were the ones doing the hiring of government attorneys, I suppose that had nothing to do with it. Still, I hope it has not gone unnoticed that oil has crashed by about 50%. Curiously enough, when a lot of firms have blown up, AIG in particular. Yet there does not seem to be any corresponding change in the fundamentals. There's still the war, and the global consumption has not declined by 50% in such a short time. So was oil also being manipulated? Chances are you never know, because those who were part of the club were protected by government attorneys who looked the other way. So this was when oil went up to 150 back in 07, 08, and then dropped to like $32. This is the interesting part here about the silver manipulation. He says the silver manipulation may be responsible for my entire case. As clients are well aware, I came out in September 1997 warning that they were going to manipulate silver from $4 to $7 going into January. It seems that this may have started the ball rolling for the club, was known as the Billionaires Club, made up of a lot of the big houses and particular individuals. I was invited to join the club by Republic National Bank itself. I was told flat out, stop fighting everyone and join them for once. I declined, stating bluntly I did not believe in manipulating markets, for I believed in my model would prevail in any event. It was not the first time I was invited to join in. Nevertheless, I reported that they intended to take silver up to $7, stating they're back. It appears that this time they got mad. Instead of ignoring me and sitting back comfortably, knowing they had the forces that could do anything safely in their pocket, they decided to try to manipulate the press against me. What they failed to appreciate was I was primarily a serious corporate and institutional advisor. I did not rely upon the retail newsletter trade, so getting the press to try to discredit me did not impress me very much. So we'll keep going here. A friend of mine became a board member of AIG in London. He was the former economic advisor to Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. I received a call from him to see if I would be available in my office in Princeton, New Jersey. I said sure. He then arrived the next morning, clearly under pressure from the head trader for the London AIG office. I was asked not to talk publicly about manipulating markets. I told him I never revealed who was doing that, just that certain manipulations would take place. I found it strange that AIG was becoming concerned about my public comments to hop on a plane and fly to the United States. Nevertheless, I apparently made a mistake in underestimating the concern I appeared to be creating. I had no intention to go running to the CFTC or SEC, as they were incapable of going after such schemes. So I paid the warning no mind. Still, it was AIG London that was a major player in this nefarious profession. So AIG London as well, he's talking about the late 90s here, but AIG London as well had to be, but basically brought AIG down, AIG Financial Products in London, and the US Treasury bailed them out to the tune of $160 billion. So you can now understand why these millennials are not very happy with Wall Street. So I'm going to skip here to the part where they talk about the people who are involved. So I'll skip to a couple of paragraphs. So it says, to my shock, my telephone rang. It was a broker who was not part of the club to let me know the Bank of England called a meeting in the morning of all silver brokers. I was truly shocked. Obviously, the press didn't want to believe me, but it seems the governments did listen. This was only a couple of hours after the call from the CFTC. Then came the real shockwave. Later that same day, Warren Buffett came out to head off the Bank of England and publicly admitted he bought $1 billion worth of silver. He denied manipulating the market and said it would be a long-term investment. The Wall Street Journal called back the next day. The journalist was in total shock. He asked me how did I know it was Buffett. I told him it was my job to know, and I hung up the phone, preferring not to get involved. So I'm going to stop at that. So that's the kind of people, according to Martin Armstrong, that are involved in the Billionaires Club. Not surprising. Who's also a good friend, one of the best friends of Warren Buffett? Well, it's Bill Gates. The other story about Bill Gates that I heard back in the early 90s when I was a futures and options broker, and I traded a lot of T-bond and treasury futures, and our firm was a London-based firm, but we had an office in Chicago, and we had brokers on the floor, traders on the floor in the CBOT. And I remember talking to my colleagues from Chicago, and they said, oh yeah, Bill Gates is huge in the T-bond futures. He does a lot of trading in the bond futures. And I thought, that's weird. Why would he do that? So you kind of understand who's in this Billionaires Club. So you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see who's behind this. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this evolves with this Reddit group, WSB or WallStreetBets, if they're going to bring Wall Street to its knees and the whole system. And one of the things that they're proving is that a lot of what's happening in the markets, it's just rigged. It's not real, because they've taken a company that wasn't worth that much, and they took the stock from $2.50 to $400. So why is it so hard to understand that Wall Street can do that, not only to small companies, but to commodities, to gold and silver, and keep the illusion that everything is great, right, in the economy by rigging the stock market? So I think it's going to be a very interesting days or weeks, or could this just be like a one-off with GameStop, and then they're going to disappear? Are the powers that be going to be able to crack down on these people? We'll have to see, but it's surely getting very interesting. So let's quickly look at where the markets are. Yesterday was a pretty negative day for the stock market. I think the NASDAQ and the S&P dropped about 2.5%. The Dow dropped 2%. And we're seeing now the markets continue to go lower here. Gold and silver got caught also in the downdraft. I'm holding on to my physical silver and gold outside the system. Yes, I do have some savings in the system, but nothing that would make me uncomfortable at night to go to sleep on the back of. So it's 10 to 9 a.m. London. We got spot gold down $5. Range has been 1850 to 1833. Silver, I think it got hit down to 24.60 or 80 yesterday, but it rebounded really well. Finished down on the day, but gold and silver actually outperformed the stock market. Right now, silver is down 22, just under 1% at 25.03. Low's been 24.84, high 25.37. I personally think what's going to happen, and WallStreetBets and these millennials might be the trigger for it. They might not do it all themselves, but they'll wake people up to the fact what's happening on Wall Street. And it could be the beginning of the end of this paper scheme that's lasted like 50 years, since 1971, where Wall Street, the hedge funds, central bankers manipulate the value or the price of everything. And I think that's going to come home to roost. And the rebalancing will be done by real money, gold and silver. Is it going to happen next week or next month? I don't know, but I think we're getting a lot closer to it. So the stock market doesn't seem to be rebounding. The Dow is down 0.5%, 150 points. The future S&P is down almost another percent here this morning. And the NASDAQ 100 futures down 1.2%. We're seeing the currencies get hit here, so that means the dollar is going up. The pound is down a third versus the dollar at 136.40. The euro is at 121, down about 1/8%, and the dollar is up a quarter versus the yen. I noticed as well the bond market, the 10-year yield is testing the 1% level. We've been, of course, up to like 120. So now it's coming back down. It's a sign that people are concerned about risks in the market. What about the commodities like copper and oil? Yeah, these are being dragged down as well. High-grade copper is down 1.5%. Crude oil is down 2/3%, still above 50. So there you go. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. Please share it far and wide. Think about subscribing to the channel if you haven't yet. And you can also follow me on other platforms like Facebook, DTube, Hive, BitChute, and Library. I wish you all a great day. Take care. Bye.